Okay, how we made a fitness coach 150K in profit in 3 months. No paid ads, no cold DMs, no being some fitness influencer. So here's the proof. This is a screenshot from our client interview. This is him hitting 56K in 1 month. And then this is him crying that he only got to 73K that month. That's the level of momentum and scale we were able to generate, that he was actually sad because he was going for a 1 million per year run rate. But if you've watched any fitness business content over the last few years, you've probably been told the same thing, right? More content, more paid ads, more cold DMs. And, Trevor kind of tried all of that. He was already a great coach, with a solid audience and clients getting fantastic results. But for almost 12 months, his business refused to grow past the same income ceiling. It's not because he wasn't working harder, but because his business just simply wasn't built to scale. So he was stuck at the sort of 7 to 9K range, and he was stuck there for about a year. So together we've rebuilt almost everything: his offer, his positioning, his client acquisition systems, sales process, and his back end as well. And the result, $151,554 and 61 in profit in just 3 months. No paid ads, no cold DMs, and no hopping on viral content trends either. All the content we made for him was his own unique style. So in this case study, I'm going to show you exactly what we changed, why we changed it, and how you can apply the same principles inside your own coaching business. So let's get into it. Just so I don't waste any of your time real quick, this is exactly who this is for. So if it's not for you, you can click off. So this is for fitness coaches who want to build and scale up a premium online coaching business to 20 to 100K per month. So if you want to attract higher quality clients who are happily will pay a premium price and build a predictable system for generating inbound leads, and you want to deliver a coaching service that actually gets real results, then you're in the right place. But just a quick disclaimer as well, this isn't some magic fix. It's not about overnight success or trying to find, the next piece of viral content or something like that. It's about doing everything in the right order, in the right way, so you can have a business with the right offer, systems, and positioning. And every business has different bottlenecks. There's not a one size fits all plug and play solution. All I'm going to be doing in this video is basically just showing you what we did for Trevor. So if you're looking for shortcuts, then this video isn't for you and I would click away. Now, something I want to do right off the bat is just, address the elephant in the room, right? It's 2026 and there's this belief going around that the market is saturated, right? There's too much competition. People are being brainwashed by social media to think that the industry is way too overcrowded, which it isn't. But even if it was, 90% of coaches, they don't even have a good offer in place. They just slap online coach, put it in their bio, and give surface level tips and tricks in their content. And you can actually get ahead of all of these people by simply just having an offer for one specific person for one specific outcome. And there's over 1 billion monthly users on Instagram, probably way more than that. So disqualifying people is not a disadvantage. It's how you actually attract the right people. So if you want clients consistently, you need to understand why people buy coaching. And they do that because your offer and messaging resonates with them. You specialize in the result that they want. Your content speaks directly to their soul and their problems. You consistently show proof of similar people winning. And you build genuine relationships instead of just waiting for leads. And yes, charging more signals greater value. And I'll get more into that in a sec. But none of this is complicated. It just comes down to two things: knowing exactly who you're helping and exactly what transformation you're helping them achieve. And this is a people's business. So people buy emotionally and they justify it logically. So if your marketing makes one person feel understood, right? You're not just trying to speak to 100 different people. One person feels understood every time you pick up the camera, then your offer actually gives them confidence that they can get to the result. Then you'll never have to worry about competition. You'll create a lane of your own and you'll become the obvious choice. So if you want to build your own 6 to 7 figure online coaching business this year, I'm going to show you how to, one, build and attract a brand with a magnetic offer that attracts and resonates with your dream client, right? We don't resort to desperation tactics or chasing anyone. Two, we're going to implement a highly nurturing funnel that you can turn new traffic into paying clients at a much higher rate than everyone else. Three, how to become an elite marketer in your content, not just posting randomly, so you can make your lead gen problem non-existent. We're going to multiply your revenue by ×5 with a bulletproof sales process and pricing structure. 4, we're going to increase your client retention while simultaneously reducing your workload on the back end. And 5, systemize your business and prepare for scale when you have everything in the right place, hitting the right KPIs, and you are actually ready to just get more volume into the ecosystem. So you can stop just being a coach, right, and finally actually become a real business owner capable of making up to 7 figures per year or more. And for those of you who don't know who I am, I'll just give you a very quick catch up. I won't bore you, but I've been in the fitness industry since 2013. Started as a PT, spent about 5 years on the gym floor before I knew that the model was quite capped, scaled online. And then I just became very obsessed with the business, marketing, and sales side of things. But the reason why I'm passionate about helping coaches is because obviously I was one myself, and it kind of holds a special place in my heart just because fitness is kind of where it all started for me. If you looked at me in school, I was socially anxious, had no confidence, had no direction in life. And then ever since going through this transformation here, weight loss transformation, everything kind of changed and fell into place for me. I kind of found a passion. So this is kind of like the before, the middle, and then the after. So yeah, I'm not just some random marketer or someone who just wants to make money and chose a random niche because they think it's profitable. I'll always want to help fitness coaches just because that's my background and that's where I specialize and where I have the most insights and experience. But I remember thinking, if only I had someone who knew what they were doing, who'd gone through the process, it would have been much easier. So that's what inspired me to be a personal trainer and then later a business consultant, not just to help people get results, but, specifically with the business consultant is to help coaches build better businesses, people who are great coaches who get great results, but they just don't have the vehicle and the infrastructure in order to actually help people at scale. So it's kind of like, if by me doing this, it's allowing me to make even more impact. And I love that. But along the way, I did various other things, like built other businesses that were quite successful as well, that scaled to 6 figures. But one of the key sort of pivotal moments was when I teamed up with an online coaching company as head of operations, and we were able to scale from 200 to 800K per month. And since then, I've partnered personally on a one-to-one basis with 75 fitness coaches as their strategic growth partner. And last year alone, these one-to-one clients generated over 3.5 million in revenue using the same principles that I'm going to show you in this video. So everything you see is not theory, it's just what we did with Trevor, the A to Z process and how he actually broke past that 8K per month income ceiling. So step one, where it all starts, right? A lot of people skip it, is the brand foundation. So, starting a coaching or high ticket business through social media was incredibly easy back in like 2010 to 2020. But especially if you were in like a niche like fat loss, for example, where it was very visually oriented. However, after this is when the supply of online coaches went up massively, but also the demand as well. But it's become a lot more cutthroat now. There's people springing up every day, sticking online coach in their bio and whatnot, taking up space on the feed. And, this is where the term that I use sometimes, the coach clone, comes from, because it's so easy to fall into that trap because you look at everyone else and you start to mirror what they're doing because you think they're successful without actually knowing what's going on behind the scenes. So this kind of leads them to be forced to charge lower prices. It's like a race to the bottom because there's no unique positioning or results or kind of like stylization to their content or their offer or their brand, no matter how special they think they are. And new coaches that latch onto the standard approach quickly realize the limitation. So below is a visual, the kind of traditional approach versus my approach. So I'll kind of walk you through that. So the traditional approach is just copy other people's offer and messaging. And the result of that is the audience feel like you're just another coach clone and you don't bring anything unique to the market. They're positioning in a way that accommodates everyone. So they're just trying to speak to everyone as opposed to specializing. So your brand and content doesn't resonate with anyone in particular, which keeps you below average in every area of the industry. They try to gain an edge by being affordable, which in my opinion is just a bit of a coping mechanism. So your brand looks cheap and people just assume it's not valuable. So obviously that's how price and psychology works. Like if you're on the lower end of the spectrum, people are just going to have negative assumptions about the value of what you're offering. If you're on the higher end, then they're going to have positive assumptions and you just need to be able to back it up for them to actually justify it. And the last thing is they try and sell through a company to look more professional instead of a personal brand. So they hide behind a website, they hide behind a logo. They don't actually speak to their audience or build a human connection on social media. So this is the FitPro Scale OS approach. We create a unique high-ticket offer designed to shine through the market sophistication of the fitness industry because obviously it's been around a long time. It's one of the most competitive niches. So the result of this is you effortlessly captivate the audience within your niche due to the depth and specificity of your offer and messaging. And you position yourself as an authority and a master of your niche through ultra precise targeting of your dream clients, right? So the result of this is you start to build and a deep nurturing process with the new followers due to how specific your content is and how much they resonate with you, with their pains, their desires, what they're going through, how they feel, which just frames you as the perfect solution. And we use a weighted pricing and value-based approach when it comes to the offer to optimize for larger upfront cash collections, which depends on the customer's needs and desires. So the result of this is all the positives of the price and psychology that I just mentioned are all now working in your favor. You're positioned as the most valuable option, and you start to attract higher quality clients who are more invested in actually achieving the result because they see you as the perfect guide who can get them there, as opposed to all these other like generalists out there. And then the last thing is you grow and monetize your personal brand. So you're not positioned as a company, you're basically selling yourself. And this is more trusting, authentic, and relatable. And also you end up attracting similar people to yourself who make really great clients to work with. Remember, if the offer and targeting and narrative are wrong, nothing else in the business is going to run smoothly. So prospects willing to pay high ticket won't find your service relatable enough. You won't close sales calls due to your service not providing enough clarity around how you get them from A to B. You'll be forced to charge lower prices due to lower market resonance, and it'll only be a downward spiral instead of like upwards momentum. So basically, when you operate like this, the way to think of it is you're just swimming upstream, and there's a lot of friction, and you're kind of going against what people naturally want and on a psychological level. So you're always going to feel like there's obstacles in the way, and you're basically swimming against the current. And you'll always feel like the business is starving. So you'll always be chasing the next client. You'll be dealing with low cash flow, and you won't be able to reinvest or actually live a desirable life of abundance, as opposed to always, where's your next bit of money coming from and all this. And this kind of translates to chasing half-interested clients, always on the lower end of desire of others due to the low perceived value of what you offer. And the average ending in sales calls is like, I need to see what my finances look like. I'll be back in touch though. I need to think about it. And then ultimately, right, and this is where it comes back to you, is you end up coping by saying, money doesn't interest me. I just want to be comfortable and know that I'm helping people who can't afford to pay high prices. And we all know that's BS. Family comes first. Your life comes first. You want to build something great here. And ultimately, if you want to build something great and make a big impact, then it all comes back to profit at the end of the day, because the better business you can build, the more you can reinvest back into the clients and actually build a business, an empire that can actually impact a lot of people at scale. So by taking that approach, the affordable approach, and convincing yourself that money doesn't matter, you're helping less people anyway, so it's just a cope. So let's talk about the dream client, okay? So we can't build an offer until we actually understand what kind of people we're looking to work with here and what problems they need solved. So before, I even helped anyone, right? This was myself. I had spoken to around 300 coaches on Facebook and iterated my messaging over time based on the coaches that I actually wanted to help. So if you don't do market research first, then don't expect to hit the nail on the head in the first instance. But, that's okay. And if you already have an audience or you've coached a lot of people like Trevor, then you can use data from the experience that you already have while being a coach or a personal trainer, right? Your reality isn't necessarily someone else's reality. And this is where people get really caught up as well. I spoke to one guy not too long ago, and I've been in touch with him, for about 3 months. And during that whole 3 months, he's been trying to refine his program the whole time and make it the perfect program before he tries to sell it. Now, from experience, and even completely new beginners that come in, we can build this out within 72 hours. I don't know if you've had the term before, like sell before you build, but it's very common when it comes to like big startups, things like that. But you need to get market validation before you actually put a lot of effort into something, or you're just going to completely waste your time. So usually, with a minimum viable product, you can actually run it, right? Just get the minimum in place required in order to actually sell the thing. And then, with client feedback, then you can make the program better over time. So we need all this feedback, not only for the program, but also for the marketing as well. So there's a few things you need to establish here. The before state, right? Identify exactly where your dream client is in their journey towards achieving an intended outcome that you want to coach. Are they a complete beginner? Are they experienced lifters who fell out of shape? Are they bodybuilders? Are they dads? Pain points, as depressing as it may seem, it's really important that we understand the main sources of unhappiness in a person's current situation and the biggest reasons for them wanting to make a change in the first place. Because what you got to remember is fitness coaching is not a logical decision. It's a very emotional decision. And if we're looking to actually help someone get out of their own way and actually make a change in their life for the better, then we have to understand, what's actually holding them back mentally and why they're unhappy with their situation. So it's just something that has to happen. Now, the roadblocks is, now you understand why they want to change so badly. You need to figure out what's stopping them so you can design your program in a way that eliminates these roadblocks and ensures that they stay on track. So systems that will make their life easier, keep them accountable, and provide them with as much clarity as possible. Because with clarity comes action. If people don't have clarity around what they need to do, then they're more likely to put it off. They're more likely to not adhere to it. So if you want to attract the right people, then it's important that you refer to these things in your content messaging. Now that we know who we're targeting here, now we can actually build the perfect offer around them. So I call this a magnetic offer. These are the elements that you want to include to increase the sophistication of your offer. Like, the more sophisticated an audience is, the more they've heard the same things over and over again, then the more sophistication that you need to have in your offer in order to create a lot of demand. So there's a kind of few elements here, right? Target audience, who's it for? What's the transformation? Pain point subtractions, things that they don't want to do in order to get the outcome. Time frame, and then guarantee. So the power of being so specific about transformation you're promising is that it gives the prospects high level of clarity, of reassurance in regards to what they're actually buying. They're not just buying coaching for the sake of it. And it feels like they're getting something tangible, as opposed to the way that most coaches try and sell, which is just promoting the deliverables. So I call them standard features. So let's look at standard features, the common way that people sell, which is, hey, I'm doing a monthly coaching. I'll give you a training plan, nutrition plan, and a weekly check-in. Dude, every coaching program on the planet has these features, right? No one wants to buy the features or the process. They just want the outcome. So here's what a magnetic offer looked like. And here's what Trevor's offer actually was. So we're using unique positioning and specificity here. So busy career-driven men. I'll help you lose 20 pounds of your body fat, pack on lean muscle, and learn how to stay in shape forever in 180 days or less using our kettlebell body method without ever stepping foot in the gym. That was one of his unique value propositions, or counting a single calorie. So those are two things that people don't necessarily like to do. And he's built a program where he's eliminated both of them. That's his methodology, and that's what he's kind of doubling down on. So in his content, he's able to throw rocks at basically anything that isn't that. And the kind of guarantee was, if our system doesn't work for you, then you don't pay. So obviously this comes with like stipulations and things like that. He's never had to give a refund, but it just makes it a lot more appealing and gives people a sense of security that, look, if I'm 100% willing to do the work here, but if it doesn't work, then it's on the coach. It's not on me, which I think is completely fair. So let's look at the pricing power. So now that, what's the actual results of putting something like this together? So when my clients implemented this framework and started presenting prospects offers like this on sales calls, they noted that unlike other people in the fitness space, they felt like the new offer actually spoke to their immediate needs, desires, pains, and fears. Additionally, they felt the offer spoke to their soul due to the depth and the specificity of the offer. So just by creating a more exclusive offer, you now have framed yourself as more of an authority and completely eliminated any competition that you would have had before when you tried to sell generic service. So for all you business coaches out there convincing your clients that they can't sell high ticket, right? I've seen the ads, people shitting on high ticket, and that all coaching is a commodity. Then you have absolutely no idea about how human psychology actually works and why people buy into coaching programs and why like certain programs speak to them specifically. Now, if the only benefit to your program is the training plan, nutrition plan, and check-ins, and you're happy with that, then feel free to click off the video. That's not who I'm looking to speak to here. But if you want to be the best coach, right? If this is your mindset, you want to be the best coach, have the best program, and get the best results for a specific kind of person, because you can't master everything. It's impossible, right? And you actually want to charge a premium for it, then keep watching. So we all know the traditional pricing, a couple $100 per month. People just default to that. But let's look at Trevor's new pricing structure here. So we had a lifestyle revamp package, which is kind of like a little reset, paid in full 2K, or you could split it. Or we did no, this is the wrong way. Or we did a pay in full 3K, right, for the complete transformation package. And that was 6 months. So we had a 3K and a 6 month here. And this is what's called a weighted pricing structure, okay, where you have two options. And what that does is it shifts their psychology from, do I want to buy this thing? We're shifting that psychology to, which option is better for me? So it's always better to have two options, right? And you always want to anchor towards the thing that you want to sell the most. And after implementing this, what we found in the data was that 80% of his new clients were choosing the 6 month, which makes sense, right? And a lot of people were deciding to pay in full if they had the money. So this kind of spoke volumes for the offer and this content messaging, because people had the certainty that this is the right program for them. If you're having to convince people on calls, then it means that you're operating too broad, your service is too generic, and there's no urgency to go with you specifically. Here's just a little screenshot regarding the pricing structure after he'd gotten quite a few paid in fulls. And for his clients who reached the end of the program, we would simply just incentivize them to stay with a reduced rate at $300 per month for basically being a good client, which helped him stack recurring revenue on the back end. So now we're optimizing for more of the customer lifetime value upfront and creating incentives towards being more financially and emotionally invested in achieving their outcome, right? Because the more you create an environment where you're incentivizing the things that are going to help them get results, then what's going to happen? They're going to get better results. So not only are you doing your business a favor, because you're going to have a much healthier business, better profit margins, more cash flow, more lifetime value secured, but you're doing your clients a favor as well, because you're creating an environment in their head where there's a fire under their ass to actually get the results. So it makes zero sense to take a brand new client on for 1 month. Okay, this should be obvious, because let's be real here. It takes around 3 months to actually see a noticeable change or even a transformation. 6 months is probably like the sweet spot where it's enough time to actually get a significant result. And then you've got like the aftercare, teaching them how to sustain it long term, building those habits and making it more of an identity shift. So 3 months is the minimum. So why not optimize for that? Okay. And a few notes, a consequence of raising prices is that by nature, it filters out clients who aren't genuinely committed, meaning that clients who come on board are much more likely to get results. So when your prices are higher than other coaches on the market and you have social proof displayed everywhere on your socials, the only possible assumptions is that your program provides more value than everyone else, and that will get them better results. So a lot of people will always pay for what they perceive as the best option. And when people have more skin in the game, they're much more coachable, they're willing to take actions on the instructions that you give them. They're just better clients altogether. So this is what I mean. We're going after these dream clients and we're giving them a really good offer. Okay, now step 2, the funnel and traffic generation. So now typically, most coaches, they are trying to run a business through social media and they don't communicate their offer or results properly. So the average coach relies on just value dumping, which is like tips and tricks. And occasionally a post that directly promotes the deliverables, the standard features, as I said. So below is a visual on the traditional strategies and the Fit Pro Scale approach to building content and profile funnel that actually converts. So let's take a look. Let's zoom in a little bit. So let's look at the coach clone. So you've got random posting, post whatever comes to mind. So people don't have a clear path to becoming a client, right? They've not designed their buyer's journey. They're posting generic tips that people can just find on Google. They're just basically info dumping. So the result of that is prospects learn, but they never buy. They don't actually understand your methodologies on a deeper level or your way of thinking. They try and sell too soon. So they book calls, like maybe they have like a Calendly link in their bio, for example, or they just rush people onto a call without any sort of nurturing processes in place. So they get a lot of objections, they get a lot of price resistance and poor close rates, and then inconsistent presence. So they just post when motivation is high. They don't have a consistent schedule, so they get forgotten within days. So let's look at the Fit Pro Scale version. Now, the customer journey, we design it, the buyer's journey, also known as. Every piece of content has a job. So prospects naturally progress towards booking, and we're directing them to the next place where we want to go in a logical way. We've got strategic content, right? Every post answers the next buying question. Every piece of content has a role. I call this a content influence. So there's around 5 of them. And we know exactly what the role of this piece of content is in order to get them to handle any psychological triggers, nurture them, and then ultimately push them down the funnel to the next sort of conversion event. So the result of this is they come pre-sold before the call. And we educate people before sales. So trust is building. We're creating a lot of goodwill. And this results in higher quality calls. People are more qualified and higher close rates and better show rates as well. Then we've got an omnipresent system. So consistent content across the buyer's journey, multiple platforms playing multiple roles. And this allows you to become the obvious choice. So most coaches simply don't understand what it actually takes for new people to spend money with them, especially in 2026, where there's a lot of supply of online coaches, even more so when you're selling premium price tags. So here's why most coaches, or how most coaches mess up this stage. They don't have a system in place to warm potential clients up in the first place. Most coaches think that they can just sell their service to people who have only seen 3 of their Instagram reels, and no one actually pre-sells prospects before the sales call, either out of laziness, incompetence, or ignorance. And my bet is on what I said before. They just simply don't understand what it takes to have new people spend money with them. They don't know how to effectively and efficiently take someone from being a stranger to becoming a client in the shortest time frame possible, which is known as lead to close time. But also laziness a little bit as well, because they don't even treat what they're doing like a real business. They're still in coach mode. They're still 1 foot in, 1 foot out of either their 9 to 5 or being a PT. And they say they want this and they say they want that, but they're still on the fence, and they think that all these great things from being an online coach will just fall on their lap and clients will fall in their inbox. Unfortunately, that's just not how it works. So 99% of coaches don't intentionally and purposely design every step of their customer journey. They just post and pray in hopes that sales will fall in their lap, posting some tips and tricks, maybe some form videos, or maybe what I eat in a day. And this leads to completely inconsistent lead flow. The leads that occasionally coming up are quite flaky because they aren't fully convinced that you can help them. And the leads that might believe you can help them aren't fully sold on your process. And the leads that maybe understand your process due to having basic understanding of coaching still have not spent enough time with you in a designed funnel to mentally justify dropping a 4-figure sum in one sitting. So the solution to all these issues is sales assets and case studies. Now, typically, most people that run businesses through social media do 1 to 3 types of funnels. These being they either A, push their social traffic to some kind of like website or opt-in page that leads to a 5-minute VSL that has a book a call link below. Or B, they send traffic directly to texting with the coach or an application. Or C, sending traffic to some kind of low-ticket ebook or sales page that they've got in their link tree. Or they just have discount codes, right? Maybe they're just operating as an influencer who says they want to be a coach. But all of these pose a similar problem. They're all extremely inefficient and low leverage funnels that subconsciously place the prospect in a guarded state of mind, right? Also known as sales resistance. So they're kind of preparing themselves to be sold to. And not to mention, none of these funnels iron out objections or pre-sell the offer before they even get on a call. So all the negative effects that stem from using these kind of funnels are, 1, they put your potential customers on guard. You get treated like a used car salesman. The potential customers barely understand what you offer in the first place. The potential customer has no context as to what kind of client results you've achieved in the past. They haven't warmed up to you whatsoever, so they haven't heard you speak on any topic in depth whatsoever. Think 7-hour rule, if you know what that is. So it's the amount of time it takes for someone to actually trust you, be familiar with you, how much time watching you, things like this, in order to actually buy something from you in the first place. They aren't sold on you and don't know your backstory. They can't vouch for your unique approach of getting results. Potential customers feel like you haven't given them any like epiphanies yet, so no like deep level insights or philosophies or anything like that. And most importantly, the prospects feel as if they're just being sold, so they don't feel like they're making the buying decision themselves. So the main point being, people aren't pre-educated or pre-sold, meaning very few, if any, book calls. And the occasional person that does book, they don't close, and they kind of treat you more like an enemy, right? And they're on high alert. So meaning they're usually bad clients anyway. But with that being said, here's a simple case study structure to follow. Now, it's also known as a Trojan horse VSL, and we use this instead of a website or anything like that. And it's positioned as a free training, right? So their sales resistance is massively lower. But here's how to structure it. You can either structure it on yourself, get into an outcome, or the client who's gone through your process and gotten a result. But first, you want a strong headline and bold claim. Same with any YouTube video. You've got the title, and then you've got a short intro that basically backs up the claim that you're making. You also obviously want to back up with evidence. You want to qualify the audience, give them a background story about you and how you got to this point. You want to explain your unique sound proposition and method, break down each stage, further emphasize the social proof, and leave the audience with a question or a subtle offer. So the magic of having a simple video like this in place is it's killing a dozen birds with one stone here. You can completely eliminate all objections and limiting beliefs if done correctly. And finally, you'll place a specifically worded questionnaire in the description and post it. So the result of this is booked calls by people who genuinely need your service due to the high level of clarity and depth that you've provided in the video. You've basically answered all their questions in one video. Not only that, but they've just sat and watched you for say 30 to 60 minutes. However, it's not as simple as just posting it on YouTube and calling it a day. We need to make absolutely sure that people were watching the entire case study before getting on sales calls. So we weren't going to take a chance on letting a single potential customer come onto a sales call without being 100% ready to purchase. So that's where the homework sequence comes in. Similarly to how I just mentioned in the last section, that most people trying to sell through socials don't engineer their customer journey, especially the final steps. This is how most people do it, right? Prospect goes through the website or application, they book a call, nothing happens until the call. The creator, coach, or sales rep shows up to the call after the prospect was completely cold for 1 to 4 days between booking the call and the call itself. And remember, people have lives. They come across thousands of these coaches online, so you're not going to be top of mind. And then if the funnel doesn't automatically nurture prospects, you're praying that they even show up to the call. You're assuming that they've watched enough of your content to trust you enough to purchase from you. And you're betting the prospect is still as warm as the moment when they actually book the call. And that sort of warmness goes down very quickly, especially if they feel like they're going to be sold to. So the call show rate is going to be lower because they're not constantly reminded of beforehand of the call. And there's no guarantee that the prospect has watched your entire case study. And because there aren't touch points between booking the call and the call itself, you aren't as top of mind as you need to be. And knowing this, we wanted to stop this from becoming a problem in the first place with the new funnel we built for Trevor. So I didn't want to take a chance on all the work we did. Prospects would become lazy and not do half of the work. They need to do their due diligence, and we need to actually encourage that as well. So here's what we did. From booked call, from booking to showing up. Let's have a look at this. So we've got the prospect applies through the calendar questionnaire. They book the call. That's all great. But now this middle bit is missing, right? So we need to set up multi-channel touch points that keep you top of mind, build trust, and ensure they actually show up prepared. So we want to set expectations, reassure them, build more trust, nurture them more in the meantime. So we've got email 1, 24 hours, reminds them to watch the full case study. We've got a text that comes through, another email, and then another text, and then they show up and they're warmer. They've watched the case study. They have all the information. They know what you're about. They know how you think. They know what your method is. If they turn up, then that means they've kind of qualified themselves. So this results in a higher show rate, higher close rate, and obviously more cash collected, more paid in fulls as well. And what you lose without nurturing is obviously lower show rate, incomplete due diligence, and you're not top of mind. And, by doing this, they're warmer. You get more shows and you get more sales. Okay, so let's go back to this. Now, what happened when we did this? This simple little tweak resulted in every single prospect having routinely watched the entire case study prior to speaking with Trevor on sales calls. And this resulted in them being much more comfortable and in a position to actually go ahead with it because they've already seen this process. They already know how he thinks. And basically they're getting on a call with the mindset that they already have all the information that they need. So they're not there to fact find. They're there to see if they actually like him and they actually want to go ahead with it, which is a much better state of mind for them to be in. So they're much warmer because they've kind of seen more of his content. And in summary, more showed up. His close rate went up from I can't remember the exact numbers, but in the 50s to over 80. I think it was 82%, right? And the rate of paid in fulls went up as well. Obviously, we'd kind of given him his new pricing structure as well, and it all just kind of fell into place. So there's another screenshot of obviously him wanting to hit his first million. And the summary, as you can clearly see, is properly designing the exact customer journey from A to B, which is just everything. It's not content. It's what happens when this happens, and then what. It's absolutely critical to making the business work at its highest level of efficiency. And at this point, all Trevor had to do was just keep posting content on TikTok and Instagram, and prospects would just keep flowing in and nurturing themselves. So lead flow had become more consistent. His calendar was being stacked with sales calls. Prospects arrive on the calls pre-warmed and ready to go. And now that he'd automated getting ready to buy high-ticket prospects on the call, which is the dream state, then it was time to really charge up the front end of his business. And we wanted to make sure that within a very short time frame, that he would only have to do things that he actually enjoyed in the business. Because as you can imagine, at this stage, things were getting pretty hectic. So we just wanted him to make content, collect lots of cash, and coach his clients, right? Those are the high leverage things that we wanted Trevor to be focused on. So we needed to make sure that happened. Now, I'll go into what we did specifically to kind of delegate those low leverage tasks, but let's talk about the traffic and demand generation first. Now, in our situation, there wasn't anything particularly wrong with Trevor's content. He'd already accumulated a decent following. I think he had about 20K, and he'd been posting for years, but he was stuck at that point. But we kind of needed to change the messaging and format of content in order to drive more buyers to the new funnel that we built. And what we found was that though his content was easy to watch and it was very motivating, there wasn't any particular elements of the content that was pushing his audience to want to make a change urgently. So there's a frequent trend among people with followings to get stuck in a cycle of having to post the same type of content that got their following in the first place. So that's what happened to him, is he'd almost gotten addicted to the vanity metrics of the stuff that was getting him likes, getting him followers, and he was scared to stray away from that because he didn't know another better way. So that's one thing we obviously had to look at, because the problem we were trying to solve was not get more followers, it was get more buyers. So, the same content that builds the following isn't the same content that drives leads and sales. So most people, when posting content, they do aimlessly and they end up not driving urgency within their audience. So they have tens of thousands of followers, but no buyers, no interest being showed, no inbound customers knocking on their door, just mindless content consumers being fed more content. So this is what you can call the content creator friend zone, or operating as an influencer. And the audience watches constantly and enjoys viewing the content, but at no point is there any holy shit, this guy can really help me, I should probably see what he has to offer. That just doesn't enter their brain because they're in more of an entertainment seeking mindset. So we needed to redesign the whole approach in order to 5 to 10x the amount of people that would actually go further into his funnel. So these techniques include a micro sales letter, 15 to 20 minute YouTube sales letters, increasing the amount of call to actions while maintaining a 10-to-1 ratio of giving to asking within stories and feed posts. If you're just doing call to actions all the time and you're just seeking something from the audience all the time, you're gonna ruin the trust you're able to build. We were assuring every video in some form or fashion communicated the essence of his new offer, assuring every video demonstrated some form of social proof, and express more personal beliefs and polarizing content to attract more loyal and die-hard audience. So we're surgically inserting copywriting techniques into short form content, and this is something that no one is really doing in a repeatable fashion. So the structure of these short form micro sales letters, and the way I think of a micro sales letter is you've got the video sales letter, which is a long form video, and then we've got kind of a micro version that we can post to short form, and then we can use that to direct people to a longer form asset that does a lot more of the selling for us. So the structure is as follows. We've got the headline and the hook, basically addressing the number one problem that they're experiencing, right? Not just addressing them by name or characteristics if you're a 35 to 50-year-old. No, it's you need to say things in a way that they're thinking themselves, right? So they feel wow, this guy understands me. 2 is we establish authority with social proof. So we're basically just backing up the claim. 3 is we want to directly give actionable advice that will help them solve the exact issues addressed in the opening hook, or some kind of epiphany or market insights that will induce a high level of motivation to seek the next logical step. Then we've got a second social proof injection to really hammer home the competence and authority and frame it as a challenge. And then we've got the 5th, which is basically where we direct in traffic to. So either to the rest of his content, or it could be a comment keyword to a lead magnet, or to send them to a longer form asset. But this kind of creates a proof flywheel effect where we're doing a lot of these videos and they're just seeing proof over and over again, more authority and so forth. So the post frequency is we did these at a frequency of 2 to 4 per week on TikTok as well as Instagram. And these posts were fantastic at driving leads, but we don't want the audience to associate us with only the 2 to 3 videos because it's too much time investment. And you have to have variety in your content where you're appealing to different personalities. Not everyone wants to watch a 2 to 3 minute video. Some people want short, quick, actionable, and some people want videos. So there's different ways you can obviously do that. You've got B-roll with text and whatnot, but you want some variety in your content so they don't get desensitized to what you're doing. We also enhanced what Trevor was already doing by adding voiceovers. So before he was doing these kettlebell workouts with text on the screen. But when we changed to the voiceovers, we found he was able to basically connect a lot deeper with the people that are watching his content. So he was getting a lot more comments and things like that. But what he was doing was he would talk not just about his workout, right, because that's very surface level, but he would talk about his views and his opinions regarding training and diet, which spiked a ton of engagement, right? because polarizing content can really blow up your page if done right. We're not trying to be an asshole here, but basically you just have to be confident in what you're saying and actually have very strong beliefs around particular topics relating to the transformation that they want. And then you'll get the people who disagree and you'll get the people who agree. The ones who agree are going to start to really build your audience with people who are emotionally bought into you and how you think. If they don't agree, then they're simply just going to give you a bit of hate, and they're going to push your content, and there's more comments to respond to. It's going to help the algorithm. It's a win-win situation here. So if you're just stuck in the middle on the fence, you're not really going to get either of those benefits. So think Andrew Tate's marketing style, but obviously much less controversial. So it intentionally creates a divide among the viewers, right? Those who disagree will comment their opinions, and those who agree will comment, like, and share, follow. So this high frequency kept Trevor at the top of his audience's mind and forced the daily impressions he was generating higher every week. So as soon as one did really well, it would boost up his baseline views on all of his other videos, and it just created this massive compounding effect. And the YouTube videos were kind of a similar structure, but they were more like free-flowing videos, not necessarily like scripted or anything like that. And they would go on YouTube 1 to 2 times per week. So these longer form pieces of content are used as a nurturing tool to increase how much total watch time he was harvesting. And obviously, we were elapsing the conversion time sooner. So earlier in the video, I talked about lead to close time. So if someone's watching you for like 30 minutes at a time, obviously it's going to take them to the point of wanting to take action or apply for your program or book a call with you much, much sooner. So a lot of people are sleeping on that. And obviously we're establishing more trust. People are getting more familiar with him at a much greater rate. So only around 3% of people who find you will be a good fit and ready to buy. But through this strategy, we're able to take the other 97% who were going to become buyers to this state much sooner. Now, another thing is amping up the call to actions. A call to action is just a path you want someone to take, like something you want them to do. You're asking something of them. But we want to make sure that we maintain that 10-to-1 give to ask ratio. So in Instagram stories, we're running the following structure. So we're promoting his new YouTube videos and directing people down the funnel to his longer form content. He had a daily flow where he just basically built the habit. So if you think of stories in terms of like touch point, 7-hour rule, if you're posting videos and things on your story every day and showing people behind the scenes and what you're up to, let's say you're only posting once a day on Instagram. If you're able to get into a flow with stories, then you could potentially boost that very easily from what's them seeing you once a day to them seeing you like 5 to 6 times a day. And we were combining that with call to actions. So obviously promoting his YouTube videos, but also some DME keyword call to actions for resources, aka his videos that he was making anyway, and also some like harder call to actions, which is directly capitalizing on anyone who may be ready right now. So we did that. He was doing multiple call to actions per week, like 4 to 6. Obviously the above is very oversimplified, but there's more justification here to behind the point of why we do each thing and what it's displaying and the role of it. But as long as the content's given to ask ratio is 10-to-1, you'll never have a problem with like burning out your audience or them feeling like you're expecting too much of them. So for example, if Trevor dropped 10 stories in a row answering people's questions, great one, by the way, the question widget, if you have a decent audience, you can give so much value, create so much authority, and it's a great way to nurture people. But let's say he's doing 10 stories, like answering questions, sharing insights, giving them advice, and then on the 11th story, decided to drop a call to action and fired people to the long form training or to DM him, then his audience wouldn't think he's being pushy whatsoever. So all in all, what were the results of this? More content in total going out, so more touch points, keeping him top of mind. The content was constantly displaying social proof around his unique methods. More total nurturing time from the YouTube content allowed the audience to spend more on time with him, seeing him talk, on obviously pushing them further down the funnel, increase the total amount of like offers per day, whether that's offering a call or just call to actions in general to generate conversations. And this allowed us to make more asks without the audience feel like he was being salesy. So that's how you do it. It's all about that give to ask ratio. And you just need to do more volume. A lot of people, they're scared to actually sell their thing or create them sales opportunities. But all it comes down to is how many people on a weekly basis can you push down to the point where you can offer them a call? That's it. And then it just becomes, okay, how many offers are you making per day? This allowed us to basically make more asks without being salesy, leading people to experiencing more call to actions given the time frame, which brought more leads through the door, obviously. So this led to a crazy amount of volume of inbound DMs, people booking calls, applications, where the leads were warmer than ever. So you can kind of see 2 paid in fulls that day. Everything in his sales process was just completely optimized. So now we had quality front end traffic solved. We needed to put together a system that stopped Trevor from spending his whole day messaging prospects. Obviously as a business owner, this isn't something that you uniquely have to do. It's a low leverage task at the end of the day, and it can be systemized very easily. So the last thing you want as a founder is to be in your DMs all day, because when shit really kicks off, it can be very overwhelming. So that leads us on to step 3, which is systems and scale. So usually when PTs and fitness coaches try to sell, they don't systemize the entire process for a high conversation rate, gathering useful insights from potential clients, or conserving time. So this results in low cash collection, as well as not planning for the future effectiveness of their marketing, right? People don't consider when you start to scale, you need profits to then create more leverage. So they are thinking in a very short time frame, as opposed to, what's my overall mission here? What kind of business do I need to build in order to facilitate that? So the solution most people take, rather than fixing these glaring issues, is to spam low ticket products and services and hiring team members that are even less in tune with what the audience wants. So this leads to low profitability, operational drag, and nonchalant team members that don't mind if the business scales or not. So this is why most people do not run profitable businesses on social media, even though they should be operating at least 80% margins, until they're doing minimum 100K per month, where complexity gets even more crazy. Now, the proper solution is to create a system to monetize off customers that can't afford the high ticket offer yet, as well as optimizing the entire back end of the business for collecting data from the most profitable customer segment. Super key. Now, this is called a value ladder. You might have heard of it, but in Trevor's case, he had this kettlebell training course for $497. And it's important to note that this wasn't just displayed in a link tree or advertised in any matter. We used it in a very strategic way in order to not distract from where we actually want people to go. So it was just simply an option to present an individual if they happen to be disqualified from the core high ticket offer. So here's a kind of breakdown of that. Let me just zoom in. So this is what I call the leveraged marketing machine. So at the top, you've got his ecosystem. Then we've got a qualification framework, which is either intercepted manually or automatically done via the VSL or Calendly. If they're qualified, we're getting them on a call. And if they're not qualified, we're pushing them to the course. Now, obviously, we're trying to prioritize getting as many people on the call as possible. So if it was a case of we didn't really 100% know if they were qualified, or there was some gray areas, obviously we would push them to a call first, because sometimes you can make negative assumptions about people and it can be false. It's happened to us plenty of times. So what we did, instead of offering this course on the front end, which by the way he was doing before, and it was clearly distracting a lot of people and creating a barrier between what he actually wanted to sell. So yeah, he was getting these sales for the course and he thought that was good. But I recommended that we remove the course from the front end. And funnily enough, the next month he went from 8K to 21K in just 1 month from removing this course that was getting sales. So what we did was we offered it as a downsell instead. So if he just couldn't close the person on the call, he knew for a fact, no, I'm not closing this person, then we would offer them the course. But he also then had, when things got a lot more crazy, volume was much higher, and he hired the appointment setter, which I'm going to talk about soon, is we had the appointment setter actually protect his time on the call. And if anyone clearly wasn't qualified, then they would just basically make sales on this low ticket course. So those are the 2 avenues. It all depended on how qualified they were. But if they came on a call and we closed them, they become a client. And if they bought the course, then obviously we're building more trust, value received, that's grown over time. And then when they're ready, then they would become a client. So this all led to gathering market data and insights, which means better marketing, optimizing the offer, and then creating more demand. And then we created like a snowball effect. So higher profits, more data, and you're able to make more impact. So let's talk about hiring the setter and this offer filtration a bit more. So What people particularly do for their sales process is just texting DM back and forth with leads, closing them on low ticket programs or core sales in the DMs. So this is what Trevor was stuck doing before working with us, and sometimes upwards of like 10 to 12 hours per day. Obviously not all in one go, but on and off. He had no systems, he had no workflow, he had no framework, and he was just on and off chatting to people all day, which was like ruining his focus. He wasn't able to focus on stuff that actually mattered and needed his full attention. So obviously there's nothing necessarily wrong with this, but it's just very low efficiency, and it ends up with the owner of the business having less total leverage than they otherwise could have. So if the entrepreneur or the coach is doing this themselves, then they aren't focused on making content and driving more potential clients to sales calls for the high-ticket offer. And because focus is split between multiple parts of the business, there's countless conversations that slip through the cracks as well. So this is another thing. Trevor wasn't tracking his leads. He had no sales pipeline. He was just relying on memory, and basically everything was stored in the inbox, which obviously creates a headache. So because a lot of conversations were falling through the cracks, there's huge amounts of cash left on the table that from prospects that would otherwise be a perfect fit for the low ticket downsell. But not only that, because he wasn't sufficiently following up with people and tracking it, a lot of people that would have been a good fit for the high ticket were also falling through the cracks. So, the solution, right? We placed a trained commission only setter in his inbox for him that would manage inbound keyword DMs for Trevor, like DM me shred to get started, or, the comment keyword call to actions. They would manage warm DM outreach to prospects that saw social proof and client results on the stories. So new followers, people who are engaging with his stories, things like that. And then they would set even more qualified calls for Trevor because they were on top of things. Their only job was to manage this sales pipeline, follow up with people, reach out to new people, handle inbound DMs. That was their only job. And because they're commission only, they were incentivized to do as much as possible. And obviously booking coaching applicants into Trevor's calendar once they'd been qualified. So this was a really important addition to the business, as his lead flow was crazy, and we had to implement a system that protected his time at all costs so that he could focus on sales, making money, and content. And the last thing we wanted was having a ton of calls with tire kickers taking up all of his time. So when we plugged in the setup for Trevor, we removed most of the work that he was doing on a daily basis because that was taking up most of his time, to be honest. And this made his entire system more efficient. So now he would only have to focus on higher level tasks within the business and wasn't bogged down by the DMs constantly. So here's just a little message of him saying that the setter is logged in and he's an animal. And to be honest, when you hire someone, your systems and SOPs and reporting, like KPIs and how they report to you, has to be so dialed in, because then you actually have a finger on the pulse of what's going on. It's not just a case of hiring a random person, roughly telling them what to do, and then just letting them loose in the DMs. You're going to blow your money. They're not going to perform. But basically now, after we hired someone in the proper way and trained them up and made sure that, they knew the KPIs, they knew what success looked like, and because they're commission only, they were obviously working hard, then he's now spending less time to make more money. If that isn't leverage in a nutshell, I don't know what is. Now, the sales process, right, after all the energy and focus we poured into dialing in the new ideal client persona, the offer, the case study, brushing up the content, the profile optimization, training the setter, we needed to make absolutely sure that Trevor was closing people on all these calls. This means that we needed to give him a structure for his calls so his close rate was high right from the get-go. And what I found really interesting was that his close rate actually increased despite we doubling his prices. So here's the two things we did to make an absolutely lethal sales process that allowed Trevor to close above 60%. And obviously a lot of those were paid in fulls as well. So number one is we crafted and gave Trevor an entire sales script line of questioning word for word. We helped him put together a very professional presentation, obviously in collaboration with his case study, that prospects were crystal clear on how he would get them from A to B. So here's kind of the overview of the script. Obviously this is very simplified, right? It's not word for word. Let me just get this. So it's kind of split up into a few parts here. We've got the intro, the discovery, future situation, qualification, and then the presentation itself. So obviously at the start, right, this is where you take frame, you set expectations, set the agenda, and we're obviously trying to acquire micro commitments the whole way through. So these calls usually take around 45 minutes. Now still a good time. So we're just avoiding any future excuses about having to get off the call. We want to set the agenda and make it very clear that you are going to be leading the conversation. So they kind of usually just take a step back and understand that, okay, you're in control of the conversation, which kind of removes any uncertainty about the direction of the call anyway. And then we've got the discovery phase. So what inspired you to book the call? It's a great one. This usually just gets them to open up about their struggles right from the get-go, to be honest. What are your biggest struggles relating to it? If they haven't told you already, what effect are these actually having on your life? We're trying to really build a very clear picture here about why they need to change. How long have you been trying to solve this for? Obviously, we want to create a time frame. So a good little tip, I suppose, when you're on these calls is just having a notepad in front of you and knowing exactly what information you're actually trying to acquire. So usually you just want to know what the gap is and how long they've been dealing with that gap. So the gap is what they're doing currently, what's their goal, what are their struggles, which is the gap, and then obviously how long they've been dealing with it. Because the longer they've been dealing with these problems, obviously the more urgency there is to actually acquire a solution. Can you walk me through what your day-to-day looks like, habits, environment? Again, we're just trying to create more of a gap here around what they're doing wrong or what's not working. What would your life look like if all of these were improved? So this is where we start to frame your program as the solution to make these improvements for them. Do you currently have a solution in place to address these? So we're further highlighting that what they're currently doing isn't working, or they don't have anything in place, or maybe they've had a coach before, or they've tried something in the past, which is quite crucial. Is you want to know what they've tried in the past, what they didn't like about it, or what they liked about it, because you're not going to pitch them something that relates to any of those things, right? Everything has to be custom to the person. Future situations, so ideally, where do you actually want to take this? How do you want your life to look? So we're trying to create a picture of that ideal life. How would that affect you? Mainly emotionally, what would change for you? And in your own honest opinion, what would stop you from hitting this goal on your own? You obviously have to word that in a specific way. Basically, the best case scenario here is they basically just admit why they need to invest in the program. What made you decide to book the call, and why do you need to solve this now? Again, you have to word that in the right way. So I know you've been dealing with this for X amount of time, but I'm just curious, what was the nail in the coffin that actually made you book the call and decide that you wanted to take care of this now? You're basically just putting the pin in, and this is where they really open up about, okay, what was the catalyst that made them just want to change this right this second? Not last month, not next month, but now. And how would you feel if you weren't able to get to this point? Obviously, we're just emphasizing the cost of inaction here. Then we've got the qualification and transition phase, which is where you basically just decide, are they someone you want to work with? Are they a good fit? And are you confident that you can get them results? And this is where you have to be ethical, right? We're not just trying to get anyone in the program here, not only because it's going to diminish how good your program is for other people, but also just from an ethical point of view. If you don't think you should help them, then you should point them in the right direction somewhere else. So we're basically just getting the micro commitment of them wanting to hear more about the program. Because if they are a good fit, then you would just simply ask them, cool, I'm very confident I can help you based on what you've told me. Would you like to see a bit more about how we actually get results for clients? So obviously we're having them micro commit here to wanting to know more. And then that's when you go into the sales presentation elements, which is basically the offer, your background, why you actually are now in the position where you created this methodology, why you decided to do that. But you're just framing it as you're basically doing positioning live. So your methods versus other methods, you're showing them the roadmap from A to B. This is where you basically logically secure the deal. And then the program deliverables, which you just stack as much value as possible. And then obviously the investment issues as well. But you want to present this with confidence, build trust, demonstrate value, and show them a very, very clear path. And also a value stack that's very tailored to them individually, not just training plan, nutrition plan, and check-ins, So there's two important things that Trevor kept in mind while running this. One is that you must pay attention and listen to what they're actually looking for from you as a coach and your program, because this is exactly what you're going to focus on when it comes to the presentation. So obviously you're not going to spend minutes at a time talking about stuff that they've not even mentioned to you. you're just going to skim over those parts, maybe justify why it's key, right, to make sense to other parts. But what you're really going to do is, I know if you had that notepad in front of you and you've collected all this information, is you just need to focus on the stuff that they care deeply about and that revolve around why they're still in this position, right? Those are the things you're trying to solve for them. And if you talk about things they don't care about, then that's when you start to lose them a little bit and they start to not see your solution as the perfect solution. And number two is, as you're progressing through the call, it's always important to always be acquiring the micro commitments and temp checks from the prospect. So for example, does that make sense? Does that resonate? Can you see how that would help? Would you like me to show you X, the next section? Is there anything you're unsure about? All these little things that just make sure that you don't skip ahead too quickly when they're not certain about something. We want to make sure that their certainty is as high as possible by the end. So it's much easier to handle questions, concerns, objections before the end of the call. So when Trevor reaches the end of the presentation, just before the investment, you'll do one last temp check, which is, given your current situation and everything I've just explained about how the program works, this feature, and this feature, and also your own ability to execute, how would you rate your likelihood of getting results once inside the program on a scale of 1 to 10? 1 being it's useless and you'd do anything to get off this call right now. You can make this, it's better to make this part a bit lighthearted. Like, it's not meant to sound serious. It's meant to get a bit of a laugh out of them. And then 10 being you think it'll massively help you. What would you say? Where's your head at right now? Just so I know if this is even something you actually want or need. If the prospect says anything other than 10, then that's basically you've just been presented with an opportunity to handle any concerns or objections before you get to the price where it's much more difficult. And that's kind of where you lose all leverages at the end. So after giving so if this happens, you just obviously have to handle the objection and have them agree with you basically before you move on. So if this was handled, blah, 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 and this was this way, then you'd be a 10, right? And they'd probably say yes. But obviously you want the certainty as high as possible before you move on to the next part. But after giving Trevor an exact word-for-word sales script that you could use over and over again, placing the setter, the closing and cash collection process for the offer and the automated low ticket were now standardized. So the result of this, the high ticket sales were closing consistently right from the get-go, averaging 3K ticket on the calls, and then the bottom end filtration becoming a sales machine, which was completely hands-off for him. He was averaging $497 per day without him even having to touch his DMs. So the back-end client fulfillment. So at this point, we had Trevor starting to acquire clients at a pretty rapid rate. By the time we were 1 month in, he'd already gotten a 2-week period where he had 16 new clients and collected 39K in cash, which is insane. So this all sounds amazing, right? Except for the fact that he was individually managing every single one. This caused concern for 2 reasons. And one of the things he actually highlighted when he first jumped on the call with me was his operations and systems on the back end. He kind of knew that he wasn't really scalable and he was going to hit a wall pretty quickly. So this was one of the things that we had to solve pretty immediately, to be honest. So I know I'm explaining this at the end, but this was actually something we built out pretty soon before we started, hammering the content and things like that. So obviously, him managing every single person is a concern for 2 reasons. One is that there's obviously a severe time commitment and drop in total efficiency of the business that's caused by doing solely one-to-one. And then 2, the energy expenditure from doing one-to-ones with every single person, regardless of which offer they came on, results in a less tangible but still huge loss in productivity and energy that could be spent towards content, sales calls, and actually managing the growth of the business as a whole. So basically, he was spending more time in the business rather than on the business. So just a quick side note and insight for you guys who are doing fairly big numbers, or for anyone in the future, you should be trying to allocate all your time towards the tasks in the business that can't be automated and can't be delegated. And most importantly, if you want to be performing at your best, then leveraging your business in a way that allows you to focus on the parts that you genuinely love to do as well. That's super underrated. So obviously there's different ways you can build leverage. There's different directions you can go. The principle is still the same, but ultimately you're going to be most productive if you're focused on the things that only you can do and the things that you love doing the most, right? Business is not about looking at your strengths and weaknesses, focusing on the weaknesses, trying to get them better. You're going to create more scale if you just double down on what your strengths are. You have to focus on the biggest constraints that are going to actually unlock a lot of growth. So by doing that, you're putting yourself in a much stronger position, and then you can just outsource or delegate the weaknesses or the low leverage tasks. So if you hate messaging, hire a setter. If you hate sales, hire a closer. If you hate doing onboarding and check-ins, then obviously hire a coach. So this is exactly why running a high ticket offer is so important, because if you're genuinely looking to grow and make a really big impact here, then you've got the luxury of using profits to invest back into your business and ultimately make more impact in the market and help more people. So here's what we did to make sure Trevor could get as many clients as he wanted without ever experiencing back-end problems. We simply modified the delivery of the offer where the high ticket clients would get an initial one-to-one onboarding, right? Because the onboarding experience is super important. So we didn't want to take that away. But after that, they would just be plugged into 2 group coaching calls per week. So what does that even mean? Every person could talk to every other active client. So he's creating a community of like-minded people where like the community element becomes part of the value really. And they can all get to know each other. Compared to one-to-one coaching, this helped Trevor in 3 ways. So 1, the client base became easier to manage due to the group setting and one-to-many approach. 2, the community setting made each client want to be known inside the group, right? There's like a healthy competition here. Most of his clients were men, so men like status, so they wanted to be like the best clients. And then Trevor could virtually handle an infinite amount of clients in this type of setting. And now, because he was able to handle more clients, Trevor was able to get a larger amount of total clients results in the same time frame, while still sort of working the same, if not less every day. And this is exactly what we intended. Another thing to note is before he was kind of just messaging clients whenever they messaged him. Whereas what we did was we split his day. We created 2 blocks for him in the day so that his focus was protected in any time outside of those blocks. And in those blocks, he would just basically clear his client inbox. He would just do that 2 times a day, which is more than enough touch points. And it just means he could do it all at once and then focus on what he was doing in the meantime. A lot of people just reply to clients whenever, which is a big, big mistake. So with this being said, right, so now he's able to handle more clients. We'd systemized things. We'd made his delivery more leveraged. Now we can talk about, okay, what happens next, okay? The marketing recursion. So it's very uncommon for people in the fitness coaching or the coaching space in general to think about their offer as a true product or to think about their clients as customers, okay? But we wanted to give him permanent leverage and create a legitimate cash flow and asset that allowed him to have the freedom he actually wanted when he started his business in the first place. So if you remember what I stated about Trevor's day-to-day in the beginning, he was posting, pounding the DMs, praying for a compounding effect to take place, a linear manual approach, the effects being the coach is stuck with the main driver of the business being more time, labor, effort on a day-to-day basis, to the business staying in the same place, stagnating due to no compounded growth or leverage with the same amount of effort every day. And 3, Trevor essentially building him a job, right? Replacing his 9 to 5 or the 7 to 10. So here's what we did to permanently create this leverage for his business that no one else in the space is doing. And I call this the marketing recursion process, also known as a social proof snowball effect. The social proof snowball effect is to do with the results, which also tie into the marketing and help this and amplify it. But this is what we did when we took the data he was acquiring from the market in order to combine these 2 things to create this recursion process. So the concept essentially being utilizing the language, data, and messaging collected behind the scenes to increase the resonance all the way up and down the chain of content. So we were using the market data and also the social proof to just completely amplify his business. So here's how we got the data for the marketing recursion. Trevor would take notes in a spreadsheet of the pain points, struggles, and people were facing, talking with the setter, and also took notes of comments. He was also using Fathom AI to record all the sales calls, right? So that he had this data and then he could just log the data in the spreadsheet. And 2, we also noted the desires people were mentioned on sales calls. We also started collecting data from coaching calls as to what the common issues, emotional states were experiencing during difficult times. And we also made sure that we were collecting as many client testimonials and transformations as we could from existing clients and new clients after 30 days of being in the program. So we started collecting all this information and then began to apply it to the front end of his content in the following format. And this applies to TikTok, IG, and YouTube. So we're using the pain points people note in the DMs and sales calls as the basis for hooks and openers, and using all the transformations and case studies to back up our hooks in the micro and mid-form sales letters. on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube. We use the epiphanies Trevor was giving people on the back end coaching calls as the body of the content on the front end to create more content gravity, more gravitational pull towards his brand. And then 4, we use people's desires they noted on sales calls as the motivating factor for directing people to watch more of his content. So in call to actions, it's not just a case of follow me for more or go and watch more of my content. It has to be something that incentivizes and triggers an emotion in order to do the action. So essentially, the closer someone was to the fulfillment stage, the more data we got as to why they really purchased. So we can use the things that they say, the pains they mentioned, the hurdles that they need help overcoming, what they hate, what they like, what they're sick of, and what they love. Not only that, but now because Trevor had all of these clients come through the door in his new program, there were more and more people that were giving him testimonials and before and after transformations. So we used this as ammo to fire on all his socials to intensify the undeniable truth behind his messaging and program effectiveness. So remember, we need to provide the audience with as many indicators as possible that Trevor's new way of home kettlebell workouts and beliefs around nutrition are the only thing the viewers should be listening to, so that we need to stack evidence right in front of their eyes. So we literally turned his business into a money printer because all of this data was just amplifying what the audience needed to hear in order to actually take action. And not only that we were stacking so much evidence that it would just create this complete snowball effect. So he was making more money every 3 to 5 days than he used to make in a single month, with better clients that were getting better results, doing less activities they didn't like, and working less than he was before. And when you intentionally design every single granular step of the customer journey and communicate the proper message at every stage of your ecosystem, is when you get to see this feedback loop firing on all cylinders. So more client acquisition means more results, and more results means more client acquisition. And then you throw the market data into that as well, and it just amplifies even more. So it's a really beautiful cycle to see play out in real time. And he was experiencing it firsthand. So just to summarize everything, so you can see this at a high level, right? Identify your dream client, craft your high-ticket offer that is catered to the market demand and make it unique. Design your profile funnel with exact steps and nuances in order to attract potential clients. Write an in-depth case study breakdown that shows effectiveness of your program and provides a high-level value to the viewer. Ensure that prospects who book a call are put through an actual nurturing sequence and they turn up to the call warm. And apply a micro sales letter strategy, high-frequency content approach in order to generate traffic and leads into the profile funnel. Hire and train and manage an appointment setter that collects cash on deals for you in the DMs without you doing anything and puts calls on your calendar with prospects with money who are a good fit. Write your master sales script in order to sell your high-ticket service, ideally with a close rate of 50% or more. Build a bulletproof backend to get yourself out the trenches and focus on working on the business instead of being stuck inside of it. And then implement a marketing recursion process so you can consistently, and profitably scale without having to work harder or recruit a big team. So what is the next step? So for those of you who don't want to waste months or even years trying to learn or implement this on your own, here's my offer to you. So if you're a personal trainer, an online fitness coach, or fitness enthusiast who wants to build, launch, and or scale your online fitness coaching business, you want the freedom to be able to work anywhere without a capped income, and you currently don't have a predictable way of attracting more high-ticket, high-paying clients, and you don't have the business systems that are actually capable of, handling 50K plus months with 80% profit margins across 50 plus clients while working less than 20 hours per week, then what we'll do is we'll install this exact business marketing and sales and fulfillment system into your business so you can replicate this process, get similar results for yourself in a fraction of the time it'll take you to do it on your own and build all this out and optimize it. If that sounds like somewhere where you're at right now, then click the link below, book a free one-to-one growth audit. And what we'll do is we'll diagnose your whole business and we'll come up with a free 30-day game plan. And whether we work together or not, right, you'll have complete clarity around what you need to do over the next few months to scale your online coaching business. But if not, just take this breakdown, implement everything you learn, and I genuinely hope it helps.